Hello and welcome to another episode of Frames Team, and today let's discuss the Nikon 35mm f1.2 and the Nikon Z6III. Let's begin with the Nikon 35mm f1.2, but before that I would just like to remind you to subscribe to the channel. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the channel. And if you're here for the second or third time, welcome to the channel, and please subscribe, like the video if you like it, and let me know in the comment section what more stuff you'd like to see on the channel. I do Nikon, I do Fuji, and I also do a little bit of Sony. But most importantly, the ambition is not to make a gear channel, although I end up talking about gear a lot because it's just exciting, and I'm sure you share the excitement as well. And that's why we're going to talk about what you're going to talk about today. So do me a favor, subscribe, and let's move on to the conversation. Now, the 35 f1.2 is an exciting lens. It's an exciting idea. There is no other autofocus 35mm 1.2 apart from the Sigma done for the Sony E-mount. Now, Sigma, so it's a unique lens and it's going to be exciting. There are some third-party manual focus 35 1.2 lenses, full frame. But overall, it's a very, very rare proposition. Canon users are also anticipating a similar lens for the Canon RF mount. The thing about a 35mm lens is that you get the best out of any 35mm lens when you're agile, when you're moving around, when you're exploring different angles. If you're not doing that, then you're just standing static and just not really exploring different angles, different perspectives. Then you're really losing out on what a 35mm can do for you. And therefore, I think Nikon needs to keep, I know it's kind of late in the day, but I expect Nikon to have kept in mind this. I expect Nikon to have kept in mind that this is the actual use case. And therefore, I would want 4 things in this lens. And these 4 things would make for a stellar 35mm 1.2 lens. Okay. I want it to be shorter, first of all, because if you remember the 50mm 1.2 from Nikon Z mount, it's a pretty long lens, and it's not easy to balance with most cameras from the Z series of camera lineups. So I think this lens should be shorter. Okay, the weight should be within 750 grams. I'm really saying 750 grams, but I'm okay if it's within 850 grams. Now, remember that the Sony 35 1.4 is only 524 grams. That's not a lot at all. It's actually quite a light lens. Now, I'm shooting right now on the Tamron 35 1.4. That's a Nikon mount, F mount lens, and together with the FTZ adapter, the Tamron 35 1.4 is almost 900 grams. And to be honest, on a hot day or a humid day, it's not fun to use that at all because, like I said, you tend to move around with the 35mm lens. So the lens should keep that use case in mind. Now, mind you, the Sigma 1.2 35mm is actually 1080 grams in weight. 1080 is just above a kilo, and by any standards, as a heavy general purpose normal to wide focal length lens. That's a pretty heavy lens. But then Sigma is known for making large lenses. The Art series lenses are mostly large. They're not like, remember the 105 1.4 from Sigma. It's like a humongous lens. It's got a handle. The lens actually comes with a collar. There is the Nikon 105 1.4, and it's nowhere close to the Sigma in terms of size and weight. Yeah, the Sigma was a bit sharper, but then it's nearly not as useful or usable as the Nikon 105 1.4. And that's the whole thing. It's not enough to just make a great lens. The use case, the usability has to be kept in mind, and therefore I think it should be a shorter lens, and it should be a lens within 750 to 850 grams. Now, the third success aspect is that it has to be optimized for video. The autofocus especially has to be optimized for video, minimize the focus breathing. I know that I've asked for a shorter lens, and when the focusing element doesn't have a lot of room to actually move back and forth, then you tend to have focus breathing. But then that is an engineering challenge. I really expect this lens probably to have a couple of focusing elements inside the lens so that the lens is actually shorter, and also silent and powerful dual autofocus motors that makes it a very powerful companionship equipment for video. See, the fourth criteria for this lens to become a success lens can sound a bit strange. I want this lens to be a 77 millimeters filter thread lens. I don't want it to have a 82 millimeters filter thread. The reason is that I think for a lot of people in a lot of situations, if you have a 35 1.2, then if you add a 70 to 200 2.8, that excellent 70 to 200 2.8, or even the 70 to 180 2.8, if you add that to the 35 1.2, I think you're doing a lot just with these two lenses. And if you look at the Nikon 70 to 200 2.8, it actually comes with a 77 millimeters filter thread. So I think it aligns with the conversation of keeping the lens short, keeping the lens within a certain grammage, should be within 750 gram to 800 to 850 grams, not more than that at all. Obviously, if the front element is slightly smaller but still manages to give you that 1.2 worth of light and bokeh, that's what you want. And I think these four things together will mark a step forward for the Nikon lens, Z mount lens engineering and design, because we started off with large lenses, but now we are starting to see relatively compact lenses. I think the 85 1.2 was already an improvement on the 50 1.2. In fact, if you put them side by side and you just ask someone who's fresh, who doesn't know about this Nikon line of products, they will say that the 85 is actually probably the 50 because it's actually shorter than the 50 millimeters 1.2. Can you imagine? So I expect Nikon to progress on that path and make the 35 1.2 slightly more easy to handle, easy to shoot with, and fun, honestly, to shoot with. I often think that Sony has a great lens. I mean, there are optical challenges with the Sony 50 millimeters 1.2. It's not as perfect as the Nikon 50 1.2, but then for most people, especially for shooting photos, that Sony lens with the kind of size, weight, and performance, I think it's a great combination. So yeah, so that's what I'm expecting. I expect this lens to come out either together with the Z6III, or I expect it to come out late March, maybe the last couple of weeks of March. You don't know, we may suddenly see the 35 1.2 come out. Now, I have heard from a trusted source that the Nikon Z6III will actually come out along with the 35 1.2. I don't know how far that's true, but then, I mean, it could be that it's a single day when both of these things are launched, or it's the same day when they're both announced, or they're actually back to back so much that it almost sounds like they're launched together, but they may not be actually launched together on the same day. I'm okay if Nikon actually launches them together, because I don't want Nikon to launch the 35 1.2 in March and then take a breather from the launch and take a couple of more months to launch this Z6III. I'd rather have Nikon launch both of them together at one go within the first few weeks of April 2024. So that's my expectation. Now, talking about the Z6III, I have got some news that the Z6III could be a 33 megapixels sensor. I'm not too sure about it, because if you follow Nikon rumors, they seem very convinced about this being a 24 something megapixel camera. But I think the 33 megapixel Z6III makes a lot of sense, because then you clear the road for a couple of cameras to exist at 24 megapixels. And that's the Nikon ZF at $2,000 price mark, and the Nikon Z5 II. And I think the Nikon Z5 II is a significant camera which should come at around 24 megapixels, should come with a 24 megapixel sensor, and should come at around $1,400 or $1,500 with tremendous amount of updates that you can get from the XP 7 processor. So instead of having 3 cameras at 24 megapixels, it makes sense for Nikon to have a camera, the Z6III, at 33 or 35 megapixels. That's also a space where Nikon traditionally always had a body. 30 something megapixels. So I think the Z6III is well positioned to be a 30 something megapixel sensor, but then it has to be a fast reading sensor so that you don't have adverse impact on video record capabilities. For example, we have heard that it should be able to do 6K 60 and 4K 60 full frame. At the same time, it should be able to do 4K 120 with a slight crop. Those are powerful video features, and I think for Nikon to achieve it, the sensor has to be fast reading. It can't be a slow reading sensor like a A7 IV. That's where I'm going to leave this conversation here. I'm going to see you soon, very soon, with another one. I request you to support the channel by subscribing and liking the video if you like it. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your expectations are about the 35 1.2. Do you want to buy it? What 35mm lens are you actually looking for? What is more exciting to you, a 35, 50 or an 85 1.2? I think the 35 1.2 and 85 1.2 are great combinations to have in your kitty, along with the 72 to 100 for most shooting scenarios, especially for street photographer, wedding photographer, events photographer. These three lenses, 35, 85, 70 to 200, especially on a high resolution body like the Z8 or the Z9. So there we have it. I'm going to see you soon with another one. Subscribe.